disagreement. Justice Halil Yusuf held that Mariam Sanda allowed anger to becloud her sense of reasoning.
That the long arm of the law have actually caught up with the offender.
But the truth of the matter is that law has nothing to do with sentiments.
The federal government has reaffirmed its commitment towards addressing challenges facing internally displaced persons in the country. Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, Sadia Umar Farouk, gave the assurance when she visited Government House, Bauchi.
We want to support them to rebuild their lives and their homes. This is what NEDC, the North Development Commission, is all about.
And that concludes the news highlight for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues after this break with Kinsley and Jimmy. Stay with us.
20 years of travel and counting. 20 years of promoting tourism in Africa and diaspora. Over 3 million kilometers traveled. Over 30 African countries visited. Explored the diaspora in 4 continents. Connected over 100,000 happy tourists to Africa. Reached over 50 million homes. Igniting smile across Africa and beyond. As Goge Africa turns 20, we thank you and invite you to join us in a quest for 20 must-visit destinations in partnerships with the largest TV network in Africa, the NTA, Ministry of Information and Culture, Ministry of Transportation, Studio 24, Delta Airline, Toll Brokers International. You too can still be a partner. Call the numbers on your screen or info@gogeafrica.tv. Goge Africa, celebrating 2 decades of heritage, travel and tourism.
Not so fast. Look, I'm tired. I want to check out this country for greener pastures.
Just calm down for a moment. Please sit down.
Do you have a job where you're going to? No, but someone is arranging,
Listen, Alinko. Checking out of this country without proper planning means one thing. Unimaginable begin.
I've been in the diaspora, but legitimately doing great things at home and abroad. As I've been saying, without the proper footing abroad, the risk is not worth it. Listen, Alinko, it's better to be home than be trapped abroad or even end up in prison.
Are you a business owner struggling to find your way? Smeaton is the answer. The Small and Medium Enterprises Development Agency of Nigeria is here to help you succeed.
How?
Smeaton gives you entrepreneurship training that will make your business grow big.
What else can Smeaton do for me?
It can create access to finance.
You mean getting more money for my business?
Sure. Smeaton can help you prepare a good feasibility study and link you up with the finance institutions that would fund your business.
Tell me more.
It can also create access to market through local and international trade fairs, opportunity fairs, and exhibitions. Smeaton also organizes programs to identify innovative entrepreneurs and promote their business ideas.
Wow, Smeaton is really the way to grow my business.
Absolutely. For further information, contact us at Plot 35, Port Harcourt Crescent, Area 11, Garki, Abuja, or visit our website www.smeaton.gov.ng or any of our state offices in the 36 states of the Federation.
Think big and start small with Smeaton.
This year, the weather conditions Harmattan in Nigeria is harsh, with temperature dropping very low in some parts of the country. Many underprivileged children are exposed to these harsh weather conditions, putting them at risk to all sorts of respiratory infections with devastating consequences. We request well-meaning Nigerians to kindly donate warm clothing, blankets, beverages, soap, moisturizers, and other essential items for the benefit of these children. Get involved to support displaced and underprivileged children exposed to these harsh weather conditions. Powered by Aisha Buhari Foundation.
Deputy Comptroller of Customs, Joseph Atta, the spokesman for the joint security exercise. Over a period of time, either through indifference or deliberate non-compliance to the ECOWAS protocol on transit of goods by our neighbors, the Nigerian Customs Service have been raising this issue. MOUs were signed severally. They were broken as soon as they were signed. We've seized over 32,050 kg bags of rice, and that is a huge impact. And then the fact that the coming in of this foreign rice have been completely shut down. We've gone around, we've received testimonies of farmers who, before now, found it difficult to sell one truck on a market day. These people say it that those who could not sell one can now sell up to 20 trucks.
Thanks for rejoining us. This is Good Morning Nigeria. Securities and Exchange Commission reads Riot Act to illegal fund managers. Now let's join Kunle Adeye for details.
The Securities and Exchange Commission has restated its determination to go after illegal fund managers and ensure that they are made to face the wrath of the law. Acting Director Mary Uduk said, besides educating the people, the Commission also goes after the promoters of these schemes. She emphasized that it is a problem around the world that can be tackled by sensitizing the public to the right investments to make, saying Ponzi scheme is a fraudulent investment operating where the operator, an individual or organization, pays returns to its investors from the new capital paid to the operators by new investors rather than from profits and through legitimate sources. And the equities market on Monday, January 27, 2020 closed on a negative note as Nigeria Stock Exchange All-Share Index depreciated by minus 0.2% to close at 29,555.299 points as against plus 0.13% appreciation recorded previously. With business news, I'm Kunle Adeye.
Many thanks, Kunle, for the business package. Next for us, a newspaper review.
Newspaper reviewer Baya Chiobi is in the studio. Good morning.
Good morning, Jumai.
Welcome.
Good morning, Kinsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, Baya, good to have you. Let's take a look at the very busy front page of the Punch newspaper. Punch, above the nameplate, you have the following headlines. Coronavirus, oil falls below $60, and OPEC plans deeper cut. Details on page 27. Community policing, confusion in commands over IJ's directive. Discos to reflect 7.5% VAT on transactions February 1st. That's page 27. And on page 16, suspected herdsmen killed 13 in fresh plateau attacks. And 2 earpieces there, centralized security system faulty needs review. That's attributed to Lawan, who is the president of the Senate, with details on page 17. Tambowal succeeds Dixon as PDP Governors Forum Chair, page 19. Now the lead story says outrage as REMFAC says politicians' pay may go up. REMFAC stands for the Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission. You have details of that story on page 28 with the following riders. Court politicians' pay, NECA, that's Employers Constitutive Association, tells Commission It's anti-masses and illegal, according to SERAP, an NGO. It's wicked and unacceptable as CDNDC, and move disappointing, declares Yaga. Court sentences Miriam Sanda to death for killing husband. And the photographs you see there are photographs from the scene at the courtroom yesterday, and a photograph of Miriam and her husband when the going was good. So that decision was handed down yesterday in Abuja. Court sentences Miriam Sanda to death for killing husband. Details on page 11. Bandits attack Abuja-bound train passengers in Kaduna. That's on page 9. Well, with this story we have to discuss. Grieving husband blames Luth for wife's death. Bauchi man nabbed for stabbing girlfriend to death. Bello inaugurated as Kogi governor for second term, page 19.
And from the Leadership newspaper, we have CBN mobilizes 140,848 tomato farmers in 25 states. And the bold headlines there you can see is President Muhammadu Buhari's integrity will reverse oil costs. That's Middle East report rates president high on economy. You find that story on page 4. Again, PDP rejects change of name as Tambuwal emerges Governors Forum chair. And the picture story there, Kogi State Governor Yahaya Bello being sworn in for a second term by the Chief Judge of the State, Justice Nasir Ajana in Lokoja yesterday. Electricity, stakeholders, customers condemn new meter acquisition scheme. That story is on page 25. Adama records 4 cases of Lassa fever. Find that story on page 16. Alleged robbery, court grants Shehu Sani 10 million naira bail. That story is on page 4. Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps arrest officer who shot Imo politician. That story is on page 6. Federal government upgrades facilities at Enugu Airport ahead of reopening. You find that story on page 26. Bye.
Well, the Federal High Court sitting at Tama yesterday sentenced Miriam Sanda to death for killing her husband, Biliaminu Bello. She is to be remanded in the Suleja Correctional Facility until she exhausts the opportunities for her appeal. A picture of a lady on the cell phone is reported to have triggered domestic quarrel, which eventually, she says, the husband fell on a broken sachet bottle while he was trying to pin her down. The court thought otherwise and convicted her for stabbing her husband in the chest and in the neck. Upon being found guilty, she had to run out of the witness, the box, and the court officials and the correctional officers had to take her back to the box. In the meantime, the court had to adjourn briefly when wailing overwhelmed the court. Upon return, the judge sentenced her to death by hanging, saying that she had allowed her anger to becloud her sense of reason. Kogi State Governor Alhaji Yahaya Bello was sworn in for the second term yesterday by State Chief Judge Justice Nasir Ajana. Governor called on friends as well as perceived foes to put aside all differences in politics, ideology, and affiliations. He invited all to join hands in giving Kogi State the best of governance in his second term. He declared, "My primary allegiance is to Kogi State and her citizens, not to any party or any tribe. Everyone is my citizen." He will therefore call on everyone in the state to queue behind him for what he described as 3 Ps to carry Kogi State in the area of to be productive, to be prosperous, and also to be peaceful. He said focus will be on agriculture for improved food security, and he's to target what he described as the first agric revolution in Kogi State. Other areas of concern will be mass employment as well as increase in internally generated revenue. Governor Yahaya Bello before he was sworn in, his deputy was also sworn in to commence the fourth term. There is a report that Kingsley read from the Punch about the Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission is to review remuneration of political office holders. What the chairman, Elias Mbam, said is that the review means the pay could go up or down depending on the outcome of the review. But the people created the impression that the review is certainly going to go up, which the paper cites agencies as condemning. Actually, Mr. Mbam said that the review, which is the primary responsibility of the commission, it will be done so that the remuneration will reflect the current realities. And he's added that it could go down or up. So that headline from the Punch is rather misleading because it created an impression that he had actually indicated that it was going to go up.
Assuming this is a trial balloon from the chairman of the Revenue Mobilization Allocation Fiscal Commission, the welter of reactions already from the number of bodies, SERAP, IAGA, and NECA, and others, should give an indication that the people want review to go down, not go up. Because the part of the complaint has been that political office holders are overpaid.
In fact, the background provided in the papers is that, one, Nigeria is rated as a third world country of lower status when it comes to the economy. However, they also pointed out that our political appointees are amongst the highest earning among politicians the world over. So these apparent contradictions is there. And also it was supported by the argument that Nigeria is in bare need of revenue, so much so that it has to borrow money for its infrastructural and other capital developments. And therefore, the idea of revenue mobilization looking at an increase is a doubtful possibility. But well, they said it is when they do the review that they will be able to determine whether it will go up or down. The other area of concern is also in Oyo State, where caretaker committee chairmen for local government areas and 35 local development areas have threatened to resume. At the same time, those appointed as caretaker committee by Governor Seyi Makinde are also threatening to resume. So you are likely to have a conflict ensuing. This is basically because the Oyo State government argues that the election of the caretaker committee by the former governor Ajimobi, by the APC, was done in contradiction against a court order. Therefore, it was illegal. And you will recall also that the Honorable Attorney General of the Federation had drawn the attention of the Commissioner of Justice and Attorney General of Oyo State to the Supreme Court ruling that neither a state governor nor a state House of Assembly has the powers to dissolve an elected local government chairman. But presently, the elected by the former governor or during the former administration and the appointed caretaker are all set to resume, and it is likely to be a position for crisis.
Yes. Quite around
all right, there's this story I read earlier from the Punch. It says bandits attack Abuja-bound train passengers in Kaduna. Clearly, this should be some cause for concern.
Yes, I listened to an audio yesterday, and a woman called her mom's phone, and they told her she said her mom is sick. Yes, we know her mom is sick. We left her somewhere just by the road where some railway workers, I just go and ask them, your mom is there. But the rest have been gone, have been taken away.
I'm not too sure about the story, whether it was the train while on the track moving that it was attacked, or the passengers were attacked in the train station.
Train station,
Good.
actually.
Now, earlier on, just about last month, there was a claim that bandits shot at the train. The managing director of the Nigeria Railway Corporation,
yes.
Engineer Ohiria, came to deny that there was nothing like that. That actually it was some bandits who hauled stones at the train that was passing. And about a couple of 6 months ago, there was also a story on the social media that government had shot at the train but because the train glass was bulletproof, it could not penetrate. Again, the Nigeria Railway Corporation said that it was a stone that was hurled at the train, not a gunshot. But the matter of concern now is that the train services has become very popular, and you need to go to the railway station to see the queue and the population of people who go to the railway station to use that facility, apparently because of the heightened fear of using the highway. The Kaduna State Governor, Nasir El-Rufai, has said that Kaduna State, Abuja-Kaduna Highway is now one of the safest in the country because of security measures that have been put in place. But citizens are still wary about using it. And that is why there's need to heighten security on the Kaduna-Abuja train and every train services for that matter. And it must be added that there are security men who accompany the train in its movement between Abuja to Kaduna and Kaduna to Abuja.
Well, let me quickly read in paraphrase a story from page 9 of the Punch newspaper. Now, it isn't the train that was attacked. Punch reports some gunmen on Saturday reportedly attacked vehicles conveying travelers from the Kaduna train station at Gaza. It was gathered that the incident happened when the passengers alighted from the train, which arrived from Abuja at about 8 p.m. Some of the passengers attacked were said to have sustained injuries, while several others were kidnapped by the gunmen, who were said to be in their large numbers. Now, this is my perspective is that this is a worrisome development, in the sense that, okay, commuters have started avoiding the Abuja-Kaduna highway on account of, at some point, the incessant kidnappings that took place on that route. So they were not patronizing the train services, which is why you have quite a crowd at any material time at the train stations, whether here in Abuja or in Kaduna. Now, the kidnappers would appear to be targeting the commuters, who are using the train services, not on the train, but apparently, in the surrounding areas, to say, okay, if we can't get you on the Abuja-Kaduna highway, we will get you when you alight. When you alight the train. Between Rigasa and the Between Rigasa, Abuja is probably, Abuja is, yes, it's fairly difficult for them. What this points to, in my opinion, is this is part of what I think the security agencies also should be worrying about. Dealing with some of these challenges of insecurity would not require just kinetic approach, that is using arms and ammunition and so on and so forth. You are seeing the economic perspective to this. The kidnappers are desperate for money, which is why, they keep looking for all ways and means. So how do you respond to all of that? I think that's a responsibility for all the tiers of government.
Yes, to respond to. Now we come to our editorial. It's coming from the Daily Trust newspaper. Lassa fever, declare war on it.
Well, Lassa fever is currently living with us. As at the last count, at least as many as 12...
with some people, not with us.
With us, I'm talking about us as a nation, because it is a national challenge. At the last count, at least 12 states have been indicated as having reported incidences of Lassa fever. And not only that, it has been a recurrent incident almost every 2 years. In 2018, we had as many as 1,081 cases, and about 92, I think it was the death rate.
So why are we not always ready?
Okay. So the challenge now is that we have to do something to tackle Lassa fever. Originally, Lassa fever was discovered in a village in Borno State, Lassa, when the first victim was a nurse, a voluntary service nurse, who became a victim there. And that is why it is given the name Lassa. And it's a virus. And the virus, for now, the editorial is saying that we need to take critical measures. First of all, to ensure that we take the war to the conveyor of Lassa, that is the rodents. And I think I agree with the editorial in the sense that, like Kingsley once suggested, we need to wage war against rodents to make sure that we eliminate rodents completely. As at yesterday, the Minister of Environment had addressed the press, and there's indication that officers of the Ministry of Environment will be going out to take charge of sanitation and areas, markets in the areas where rodents seem to exist.
Who is doing this?
The Ministry of Environment.
Which ministry?
Federal Ministry of Environment.
What are state ministries doing?
Well,
what are local governments doing?
Good. So it should trickle down to the state and the local government. But however, my immediate concern is in big urban areas, Abuja not excluded, there are public refuse dumps that are sitting patently and opulently in public. And those are the areas where rodents go to feast on. So we need to get our acts together. I remember specifically that a governor had directed that the local government chairman must find refuse dump outside of the city to make sure that they reduce incidences of rodents, because once you eliminate the rodents, we have won the war halfway. But the editorial is suggesting that there should also be inoculation. So far, I'm not too sure whether there is a vaccine for Lassa fever as yet.
Okay, Bayo Atoyebe, I would like to thank you for being around. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the NTA. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll get ahead with our principal item for discussion.
Have love, we'll be able to unite, irrespective of tribe, religion, culture. So we keep preaching on love. That is the only binding force. Let us love ourselves, irrespective of where the person comes from.
You are about to witness the commencement of the most stimulating and compelling contest on television. This contest is only for the strong, the intelligent, and talented. Get ready for the Unity Challenge reality TV show. Coming soon.
No perfect family may be under threat by germs. Germs can cause infectious diseases like diarrhea, typhoid, and flu. These infectious diseases are amongst the biggest killers of adults and children. In Nigeria, tens of thousands of children under the age of 5 have died due to diarrhea caused by germs. These illness-causing germs are everywhere. Dirty surfaces, on cuts and wounds, on your clothes, in unclean bathing water. To protect your family from germs, use the power of Dettol's 1 capful. For surface cleaning, for first aid, for your laundry, in your bathing water, and to protect your family from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Introducing Dettol with aloe vera. Soothing aloe vera. The power of Dettol is soft on skin, hard on germ. Be Dettol Sure.
My daddy is doing traveling work. I go and stay with my uncle. She told me to wash plates. I go and play football. From there, she beating me. She go and find one throwing rope, tighten my hands and my legs. I want to be a stubborn boy.
Goods and services on the right channel gives you an edge over your competitors. NTA News 24 has all the platforms for your target audience. Stations on DSTV channel 419, OTV channel 46, Star Times channel 101, and Free TV channel 703. With our digital format and wide range, we can reach your customers in next to no time. We are here to promote your business, goods and services. So partner with us for a very rewarding business experience. For more information, please call Henry on 083-379-0884 or visit our office at NTA Headquarters, Area 11, Garki, Abuja. NTA News 24. News and more news.
And to set the tone for our conversation, let's listen to this background report by Aisha Uba-Ali.
Nigeria is one of Africa's largest economies, playing its big brother role in conflict resolution with its military deployed on peacekeeping operations across the continent. However, the huge burden of tackling both internal and external conflict, as well as those in the region, may be quite a stretch, despite the country's image as a powerhouse in the West African sub-region. Many of her allies, such as the United Kingdom, have extended support to make the work easy. Since 1960, when Nigeria gained independence, it has maintained strong relations with the United Kingdom, its former colonial master, which is now one of its strongest allies. The strength of these ties have made security issues in Nigeria of great concern to Britain, with the two countries exploring weighs on improving bilateral relations. Recently, President Muhammadu Buhari visited the United Kingdom to attend the Africa-UK Investment Summit, where issues of security, economy and climate change were given priority attention. The UK had in the past made a commitment to sign defense and security agreements, which will aid in the transformation of the way both countries work together to combat shared threat by expanding training programs for the military as well as offering broader supply of equipment. Meanwhile, the issue of education, especially in the Northeast, engaged the attention of the two countries who seek collaboration to enroll more children in schools. The projection is that the London summit will deepen Nigeria-United Kingdom investment ties.
Thank you very much, Aisha Bali, for that background. Here with us in the studios to discuss this issue in further detail, would like to welcome the Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, Mr. Femi Adesina. Mr. Adesina, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Good morning, thank you.
Also here with us in the studios is the Chairman and CEO of Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, Honorable Abike Dabiri Arewa. Pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, good morning.
Okay. Jumain?
We have in the studio as well Nigeria's former ambassador to Pakistan, Ambassador Dauda Aladi. You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you.
Pleasure
Good morning,
to have you join us. And from our Lagos studio, we're being joined by an investment banker and economist, Tilewa Adebajo. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria. It's a pleasure to have you join us.
Thank you. Good morning.
And of course, right there in the middle of your screen is His Excellency, the Governor of Abia State. That's Dr. Okezie Ikpeazu. He's joining us via Skype from Umuahia, the capital of Abia State. Your Excellency, pleasure to have you with us this morning.
Thank you, Kingsley.
All right. Now, while the Skype connection is still good, visuals and audio, let's begin. Let's begin with you. let's begin with you, Your Excellency. You were, of course, at the UK Africa Summit that just ended in London. Give us a sense of your appreciation of what went on, especially from a perspective of a subnational entity.
Well, thank you. I want to first of all thank Mr. President for making me part of that trip, because Nigeria is moving ahead. We seem to have done quite a lot in terms of primary production of agricultural products. We're almost self-sufficient in rice, and we are also marching on oil palm and cassava. There is a need now to value chain, value addition. We must do something to add value to these products. And we want to key into the pro-Brexit UK economy, see what is on the table for Nigeria, how we can get support in terms of equipment, in terms of technical support, to make sure that we don't come to the market with just cassava. We can come with starch, and so on and so forth. So for us, in Abia State, we went there to promote the Enyimba Economic City. We are looking for anchor investors. We are looking for those who will help us do infrastructure. But beyond that, I was particularly thrilled because I had the privilege of meeting somebody that is coming to support our industrialization process at the rural areas. He has capacity to turn rice husk to energy and then use that energy to power our rice mills in the various communities, as well as provide off-grid electricity. They can also use the peelings from cassava to fire the cassava processing machines, and we can produce starch in our various local governments. So we are targeting 2 of such cottage industries per local government, depending on the interest of that local government. Some of our local governments are quite good in oil palm, some are good in rice. So depending on the preference of that local government, we will make sure that that particular contact we made in UK becomes useful for especially our rural women and youth. I'm also happy with the prospects of our country collaborating with other countries around the Lake Chad region to do something about Lake Chad, because that particular issue speaks to not only climate change issue, but in the economy of the Lake Chad region, because once we can get that right, we might also be on our way to solving the security problem from that area, because hunger is a catalyst for strife. So these are some of the things I think will benefit my state, and I think some other states that came like Gombe also have beautiful stories to tell about that experience.
You spoke about climate change, and it's a known fact that the eastern part of the country has problems with ecological erosion and all that. So what kind of partnership did you get out of the UK-Africa Summit to contribute to ensuring that erosion is totally eradicated from the southeast?
Yeah, I participated in a side meeting with the UK Secretary for Environment, with our Minister for Environment. And part of what we took home is the fact that there's a new technology now which we can adopt locally. The use of Gambion, which is just to get metal mesh with some stones, and then use it to check erosion at the preliminary level, and then make it erosion control part of our school curriculum. Because it is only when we allow erosion to continue to exacerbate that it becomes a monster. But if everybody becomes conscious of the possibility of an erosion, we'll be careful with felling of trees, we'll be careful with our farming practices, we'll be careful with how we go about our businesses, we'll be careful about how we perturb the subsoil. And this level of consciousness, from what I gathered, could help us also mitigate against erosion at that level. But for areas that have been devastated, we are seeking support, both locally, at the federal level and internationally, to make sure that we make sure that it doesn't ravage our homes and reduce the land area, which is not big enough for farming. We are working with NewMap and other international donor agencies to ensure that we mitigate against erosion in our state going forward.
All right. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. We will return to you in the course of the conversation. As we said, we have 4 other guys, 1 in Lagos and 3 with us here in the Abuja studio. So let's come back now to Abuja, where we earlier introduced our guest, Mr. Femi Adesina, Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity. You were with the President on this trip. Again, give us a sense of what went on from your perspective as a journalist.
Well, I'll say I did my work as a journalist from there, covering the different events and reporting to readers back home. I'll say it was a very successful outing for Nigeria. I know that there are opinions about this kind of meetings and summits now. You have India, Africa, you have Japan, Africa, you have China, Africa, Turkey, Africa is coming now. You have UK, Africa now. Aswan was at least basically African. Yes, there are opinions about it, but we have that local saying that it is he that has a saw that hops to where he can get a cure. Africa has severe deficits, particularly in infrastructure and investment. And these are opportunities for investments to come into the continent. And they are like win-win situation. It's not as if anybody is coming to exploit the continent, but they're bringing investment. Of course, when you bring investment, you are not doing it for free. You benefit, the host country benefits. So I think this UK Africa Investment Forum was a good one. Immediately from there, we began to see results. The National Investment Promotion Commission was there. It was able to unfold what Nigeria has for the world, and people began to key in immediately. You had people signing up to invest in power, to invest in aviation, and in some other sectors of the economy. So I think whatever the opinions are, the upside, the downside, it was a good outing for Nigeria, and we had things to benefit.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Femi Additional. Now, let's bring in another journalist. Honorable Abike Dabiri Erewa, of course, who is the chairman and CEO of the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission and also former member of the House of Representatives. From your perspective, what did the optics of the summit reveal?
But you should specify broadcast journalist. Thank you very much, and appreciate all the comments, the governor, my brother, Mr. Additional. For the commission, the trip was a very success. As Femi said, some people can say, oh, Africa, do they want to colonize you again? But this is not charity. Yeah. It's not charity. And then everybody sees Africa as the place to be. The future is here. But we need to ensure that we hold that future and ensure that we create what we want, not others dictate to us. But for the Diaspora Commission, our interest was more in, after this, what? And particularly, we have Nigerians in the UK that contribute hundreds of millions of pounds in the UK economy. So the Commission will be working with the Ministry of Trade and Investment, NIPC, to have a Nigeria-specific focused event where you're going to sit down and still promote your country, talk about trade and salient investment issues. Because when we talk about UK investing in Nigeria, we are focusing on our own Nigerians in the diaspora that are also thinking of what can be done. So we plan subsequently very soon, working with the Ministry of Trade and Investment and NIPC to work with Nigerians in the UK to see, they're already also signing deals, the Nigerians themselves, because they want to come back home. And they see the opportunities. So apart from the Diaspora Investment Summit that we hold annually here, there's going to be an event being planned in the UK that will be Nigeria-specific. So we want to be preemptive and deal with salient trade and investment issues, because that is a UK-Africa summit. We need to now focus on ourselves, what we have to offer. And like the governor said, you don't have to do just cassava. You can do, there are many things, there are many opportunities. So for us, I just feel there's an opportunity for us to determine our future and partnering with those that we want to partner with.
The UK is strengthening the economic partnership with African nations, and so that it can ensure the continent's growing demand for investment, which will be met with innovation and expertise. We have a lot of Nigerians out there who are experts in so many fields. How do we bring them in to ensure that this UK-Africa Summit is well invested in Nigeria?
We're already bringing them in. And like I said, while the summit was going on, we were meeting with the Nigerians in the UK. And I tell you, these are very successful Nigerians. And I keep saying it, if all those Nigerians leave that economy, it will affect it. So with the Nigerians in the diaspora, there are already some programs that are regular, the Best of Nigeria Expo, Nigeria British Summit. So like I said, the idea now is, after this, what do we do with our diaspora? So for them on their own, who are already invested in Nigeria, some are already here, trying to go into agriculture mainly, and then innovations, like you said, ICT, agriculture has been a major focus, healthcare, some are already coming to set up hospitals, education. So those are areas that I know that Nigerians in the diaspora are focusing on now. So for us, we'll continue to work with them, because when we talk about foreign investment, our own diasporas should be our first line of contact, and we have them, and of course we have too many. So we have the policy document with the Federal Executive Council, the Nigeria Diaspora Policy, the diaspora policy document. We're hoping FEC will ratify it. It's a document that will guide all diaspora engagements, and a lot of focusing on trade and investment. And for Nigeria as a nation, we're telling the world that we're getting better. The ease of doing business is getting better. And we're seeing a lot of results under this administration. So we keep marketing our own country and let them know. And then what the message from us is, just come and see. And when they come, they don't want to go back. And somebody said to me, even in this UK, that is coming next week, and it was like, when his friend came, he's like, why didn't we come earlier enough? So we have to market ourselves, let the world know what we have, what we can do. And then what you see on television is just some concussion by by some international media. So we will continue to work with our Nigerians in the diaspora to be the first ambassadors of their country, market your country, and attracting trade and investment. So for me, it was a very impressive summit, but like I said, particularly, I'm impressed with our brothers and sisters in the UK, and of course, Anthony Joshua.
Yes, we saw that, Now coming to the Nigerian High Commissioner to Pakistan, former Ambassador Dauda Danladi, the first UK-Africa summit. Why the clamor for Africa?
Well, I think, although I would like to start by making reference to Mr. Adishina's gentleman's remark with respect to opinion being expressed as a result of the frequent trips of Mr. President.
Yes.
And I think, yes, it is true that the President, since assumption of office from 2015, has made over 40 trips, foreign trips. The cost, if we just look at 2019 budget, it was the sum of 1.3 billion that was allocated for presidential travel, including the Vice President's office. And in 2020 budget, I think it is the sum of 3.3 billion that was appropriated. Now, if you convert 1.3 billion into dollars, it's just slightly about $4.5 million actually. And if you look at the gains, and I would like to quickly just take a quick look at the gains. Sukuk funding alone has generated about 100 billion naira for the provision of roads, bridges. It will cover about over 600 kilometers of roads within the 6 geopolitical zone of the country. Just on Friday, quite impressive, the Minister for Agriculture inaugurated an implementation committee that will utilize about $1.1 billion, which is funded by the Brazilian government and the Islamic Bank, Development Bank. And that project alone will create about over 100,000 jobs. It will inject about 10,000 tractors and 50,000 implements that will complement what the central bank is doing to boost food security in Nigeria. Now, if quickly I make reference to the Ajaokuta steel, no nation can develop in the absence of the steel industry. And recently, I think at the end of this month, we were told that an MOU will be signed for the revamping of the Ajaokuta steel industry. A syndicated loan of about, I think, almost $1.4 billion will be injected to revamp Ajaokuta steel industry. As you know, for all 40 years, Ajaokuta steel has defied all solutions. At the end of the day, it was even privatized. But this is not the forum for us to really go into detail about the Ajaokuta steel. But that, if you look at what South Korea has achieved, we started with South Korea. South Korea is earning about $60 billion from steel industry and providing job employment opportunities to about 62 million people. Now, if we, quick look at data. In China, it was 60 billion. China is the largest investor in Africa. In Japan, it was $40 billion that was on the table. All right. Already, I think we were told that first quarter of 2020, there is the leading company, oil leading company in Russia, Lukoil, is going to has already signed an MOU for the revamping of our refineries. If today we have our refineries functioning, it will full capacity. It will meet domestic needs, and we can even export and earn foreign exchange. Getting 100 million people out of poverty requires a robust fund. So I think if you put that against the meager amount that has been spent by Mr. President, I think we need to give kudos to Mr. President. Now, coming back to your question, the African, I think Africa, as I've always said, holds about 30% of non-proven mineral deposits in the world. The projection is that by the year 2050, there will be 2 billion people living in the African continent, which means that in every 1 out of 4 global commodity consumers will be Africa. And post-Brexit, the United Kingdom is looking at that vacuum that will be created because they will have to compete with other European countries on the African market share. And being a Commonwealth country. They are rallying around the African countries to see that that vacuum is filled towards sustainable and lasting investment that will generate the required growth to meet up with the growing demands and market that Africa will provide. More so with the anticipation of the implementation of the African Continental Trade Agreement, which is supposed to take off, I think, mid-2020. So Africa is the place. But the UK is trying to make sure that it becomes #1 destination for African countries.
Especially Nigeria.
Especially Nigeria.
All right. Thank you very much, Ambassador Danladi. Now, let's go over to Mr. Tilewa Adebajo in our Lagos Network Center, investment banker and economist. Mr. Tilewa Adebajo, I would like you to also give us your own opening comments on the, shall we say, rash of summits between a sole country and then an entire continent of countries. And whether, if you were to use your investor banker's eye to look at all this, we can have these investment promises by way of MOUs crystallize into actual investments.
Good morning, Kingsley. Thank you very much, and good morning to all the other guests on the program. I think it's important that we look at metrics to be able to justify what we're doing. Yes, I think these investment summits are very important in the sense that the British are quite, I think the Chinese started this when the Chinese president invited all the African heads of states to China. And I think people are beginning to see that China has taken a different approach to Africa. And the Europeans who had the traditional colonies in Africa now realize that the Chinese have come and they've taken over. And Chinese have not started this today. The African Union building in Addis Ababa was something that they had funded. So they're quite strategic in their interest in Africa, especially for our mineral resources. The Europeans now see that they're losing ground in Africa, and they're also now beginning to change their strategy. So they're beginning to woo Africa. So it is ironic that Britain, who used to be, Nigeria was a British colony in the past, now is struggling to get Nigeria's attention. And I think it's important that we position ourselves to take advantage of these opportunities. And as like you've rightly said, there's a lot of interest. And it's now a question of how we convert this interest into real opportunities. If we take a look at our economy remains the largest economy in Africa. Lagos is the 5th largest economy in Africa, and Nigeria is a G25 economy globally. So it's quite significant. But what the challenges we have are structural in terms of our fiscal policy, which is a big challenge right now. We're spending close to 65% of our revenues to service debt. Our debt profile is currently at about 80 billion US dollars. And if you take a look at our debt to GDP ratio, which is about 30%, it's not very healthy and sustainable. The United States of America, for instance, has a debt to GDP ratio of 101%. But the US government only uses 8% of its revenues to service its debt. We use 65% of our revenues to service our debt. And there's a plan right now to increase our debt profile from 80 billion by about 30 billion to 110 billion. So it's important that we try to take a look at using foreign direct investments to be able to fund whatever investment deficits that we have. And I think that is the way to go right now. Because our debt profile is not going to be sustainable with the debt we want to pile onto our projects. Now, we have some good projects in Nigeria at the moment. Right now, a final investment decision was reached on the LNG Train 7, which is a $10 billion investment. The government only owns about 48% of this project. And it's important that government should be able to use this LNG model to be able to create more investments in Nigeria. Because one of the biggest constraints we have now is getting that conversion and the bottlenecks between the bureaucracy Now we have the NIPC, for instance, is doing a great job. If you go onto their website, you see all these investments that have been signed on, prospects. Now, how do you convert these prospects into opportunities? Take a look at Procter & Gamble. About 5 years ago, they put 300 million into this economy, set up a new plant. The government policies now changed, and all of a sudden, they've shut down that plant. Now, that is not a good signal. What are we doing to be able to put the right policies in place to be able to ensure that not only do companies come in here, when they make investments, our policies are sustainable to ensure that they stay? So these are the issues we need to address: fiscal policy, trade policy, investment policy. These policies and our monetary policies, these 4 pillars, have to be properly synchronized to be able to get this threshold to open the floodgates. Abike, for instance, is sitting on a diaspora that brings in $30 billion into Nigeria every year. And this money has been going up over the years. It used to be $20 billion. Now it's $30 billion a year. Now, this diaspora money that is coming into Nigeria is what is helping to stabilize our foreign exchange rate. But unfortunately, this money is not coming in the right way because we have multiple exchange rate windows. If we harmonize our foreign exchange policy and take advantage of this diaspora money coming in, our exchange rate could go down to as low as 200 naira or even below 1. So my opinion is that naira is overvalued. So yes, I think it's a good effort, and I think it's important that the government and the president continue to go and promote an investment promotion for Nigeria. You have to sell yourself. And apart from selling yourself, what also happens is that when these people come back into Nigeria, and I'm happy with the comments of the governor in Abia State, talking about now agriculture and value added. It's no longer about selling the primary product. We need to add value to these products. And I think he's made a very valid point that we need value addition. And if we also take a look at the comments of the ambassador, and I think where he's talked about how things need to be more dynamic, and the policies need to be there to be able to support this. These are some things that I also agree with in terms of what the ambassador has said. Policies are very important because it's not what you say, it's what you do that really gets the foreign direct investors out of for us to come. And as Femi has said, yes, various people have various opinion that, okay, if you're going out, you're junketing. But yes, there is investment promotion, but you also have to have policies in place. For instance, now, the government had an economic recovery growth plan which said the economy would have grown 5% last year and 7% this year. So now it's important, because when people like Femi talk, it's important that you guys need to go back and, you need to revamp this economic recovery growth plan. You need to say to us, you have a new economic management team. They need to revise this economic recovery growth plan. And you need to be able to explain to people what you're going to do within the next 3 years. And in the absence of that, you see what happened last year when all the credit agencies downgraded Nigeria's outlook to negative. We need to be more sensitive to the international financial markets. Nigeria is no longer playing at the local level. A lot of foreign investors are putting close to 30, 40, 50 billion in portfolio investments into Nigeria every year. And they want to understand our policies. If we do not have policies to sensitize these guys, they will take their money away. And if we do not have the right policies that are sustainable, then the foreign direct investments are not coming. Like I said, let's take a look at where we've made progress. Take a look at the Nigerian LNG project. Take a look at that model, and let us see how we can begin to replicate it. Because despite or in spite of all the challenges we've had, and our economy is only growing at 2% per annum, Nigeria still remains the largest economy in Africa, and Lagos still remains the 5th largest economy in Africa. So there is potential. What we're looking for now is policy direction and leadership.
All right. Mr. Chilewa Adebajo, thank you very much there for your opening comments, comprehensive As always, let's return to Umuahia with the Abia State Governor still with us via Skype. Now, Your Excellency, listening to the comments by the other guests, I would like to ask this question and then barrel it with another. Tilewa, for instance, is drawing attention to a critical financing mechanism for these investments. He's warning against increasing debt and then therefore advocating more use of equity. How does that gel with you in your attempts to attract investors as well as mobilize the opportunities for investors in your state? That's one leg. Second leg of the question, you've talked about value addition to agricultural produce. This is, of course, one of the focal areas that you have worked on. I remember very clearly that you have also tried to ramp up the productive base of the industrial clusters in and around Aba, for instance, the textile and the footwear. Now, how do all of this, as it were now, broaden the horizon of Abia State and knowing which core areas to attract for investors using the right funding mechanism?
Thank you very much. I want to say that his concerns around our debt profile are valid, but my take on it is that one should not be afraid of borrowing, but the critical thing is what do you do with the borrowed funds? If we borrow to expand our economy and jumpstart production and support agriculture, we could create further opportunities to be in a good state to repay. But my worry in my state is, in addition to problems of infrastructure, we must do something to create jobs. Because by 2030, the population of Abia State will double, and we have predominantly youthful population. So we will have serious trouble in our hands if we don't create jobs quickly. It is true also that the post-Brexit UK will be looking for business in Africa, just like China and other parts of Europe are looking for business in Africa because cost of labor may be cheap here. We must also be mindful of the fact that unskilled labor may be cheap. Of course, it has to be cheap because it is unskilled. It is also unavailable. You can't do anything with unskilled labor. So we must do something about capacity building and preparing our people to take full advantage of the opportunities that will come. Then back to the second leg of your question, I'm happy to say that today in Abia State, we have gone to the point where we have successfully automated shoe production. So even in trying to participate in the continental free trade, Abia State is happy and proud to say that we are bringing shoes, bags, and all kinds of leather works, but today in an automated way. And we have also established an SME microfinance bank that supports these small-scale industries who cannot meet with what it takes to borrow from the regular banks to come and take money between 100 and 250,000 naira to set up businesses that can support what we are doing already. But our new thinking now is to further broaden the economy of our state, focusing on youth and women. And that is why we are targeting 2 cottage industries per local government in the agro-allied subsector. And we are not doing every crop. We are looking at cassava, we are looking at oil palm, we are looking at rice and some cocoa. We don't want, like I said earlier, to take cassava to the marketplace. We want to take starch. The reason is that starch is a very good raw material for pharmaceutical industries, and the shelf life is better. And the women are going to support primary production of cassava because we are not reinventing the wheel. It is what they know how to do already. But we are going to set up a system where we can buy off from the women the excess of what they harvest from their cassava farms so that we can encourage them during the next farming season to do more. We will also intervene by bringing cassava stems that can give them more yield per hectare. But fundamentally speaking, primary production will remain in the hands of women. The youth can now participate in the value addition process for cassava or for oil palm. Between 2016 and 2018, we generated about 4 million seedlings of Tenara species of oil palm, and we have planted them. So in the next 2-3 years, we're expecting a glut. So if we don't do anything about palm oil processing, we're going to also have problems. So we want to create a pool by adding value to these products. And we are very, very happy, like I said earlier, to say that part of what I got from being part of the UK trip was that we got somebody that is coming with this technology and is not going to cost the state anything. He's coming to deploy his technology to use what would have been waste from all these farm produce to power the equipment and also provide off-grid electricity for the rural communities. If we're able to achieve that, we will keep the women busy, we will expand our economy, and then we can be sure that more people will have hands on one kind of job or the other going forward. You know, so this is what I think is my take on this now.
Coming from an industrials area and attending the first UK Africa Summit, which area do you think should be strengthened, you know, in regards to Brexit? And how do we balance trade with so much coming out from your area?
Oh, yes. Like I said earlier, my greatest fear, even in signing on to the Continental Free Trade Area, is that I don't want Nigeria to be a dumping ground for other African countries also. A lot of things are happening around Togo and Ghana in terms of cocoa. For us in Abia State, we have chosen to continue to run on the things that our people can do well traditionally. And that is to say that we are going to remain major players in the leather subsector and in the garment subsector. What we have done in leather, bringing it up to a point where we have completely automated the process of shoe manufacturing in Aba today, and we are encouraging other people to key in, we are also going to replicate in garments. I want to make Aba the new production hub of garments. Let Levi's jeans, let Lacoste come to Aba and sew their clothes, because we have people that have capacity to produce. They can label it anything and sell anywhere, but let our women and our youth get involved in this big garment business that exports not only to Africa, but to the entire world. So UK must find something which they will need in Africa. And the shoes we are making in Aba today will be good enough. And we can compete because the unit price will compare very well with the unit price of the shoes that are produced in China and other places. And I'm excited with the fact that not only the Aba shoemakers, today we have a Brazilian shoemaker that is collaborating with us in Aba. The label is called Nibra Shoes, which is Nigeria-Brazil shoes. So we are creating a hub around the leather subsector, and we are sure that going forward in the next 1 year or so, we'll be prepared to offer our products not only to Nigerian market or to African market, but to the UK market and other markets globally.
Thank you very much, Abia State Governor, for the points that you have raised. Let's come back to our studios here. Again, Mr. Femi Adesina, I'm coming to you. Well, you know, as I keep raising this point as to the plenitude of these summits, is there, probably this question is more appropriate for the Minister of Foreign Affairs, but I should ask the question, is there a synthesis of the outcomes of these summits, so that at some point the Nigerian government can catch its breath and say, okay, this is what we did these were the agreements we reached with Japan. These were the agreements, takeaways from China, takeaways from Sochi in Russia, takeaways from Egypt, takeaway from Saudi Arabia, and now India, and then of course what you're having now with the UK, so that at a glance somebody can make, as we say goes, ready sense of what's going on, rather than having tier upon tier of MOUs, and then you're struggling to actually pick out that which is relevant to your particular area, as the governor in Abia appears to be doing very well.
Thank you. When we go on these trips, before the very first event of maybe a summit or a conference, there is a briefing session for the president, usually done by the Minister of Foreign Affairs. If it's like an investment summit, the Minister of Trade and Investment will be there. And you will find out that during those briefings, there are also references to things done in the past. In London particularly, the Minister for Foreign Affairs also raised the point you have raised, synthesizing the outcomes of previous investment summits. And the point is that they have desks in the ministry in charge of this thing. The Foreign Affairs will have in charge of FOCAC, which is China, will have in charge of India, Africa, India, Nigeria, well, beyond Africa now, Russia, Nigeria, and all that. They have desks that are in charge of this. And it's not unlikely that they will have same in the Ministry of Trade and Investment, so that they can bring up these issues, review them, then do an assessment, monitoring, and evaluation before we move on to the next one. So I think that exists, but it's largely the responsibility of the bureaucracy. And the onus is on the bureaucracy to ensure that these things are brought forward consistently, so that we get all the gains that we can from such summits.
Okay. Juma,
Yeah, most of the areas covered, that were on the table, climate change, clean energy, job creation, and all that. There are two programs actually that will be supporting it. That's the DFID, and the DIT, with the joint, coming into bringing funds into Nigeria. It's a lot of money actually. And how much of that is coming back home to Nigeria in areas of investment?
Yes, you will find that the relevant ministers and ministries were also there. Talking of clean energy, you heard a British PM say Britain will no longer fund anything that has to do with coal, because they are committed to a cleaner world, one that is environment friendly. And for them, coal is not the thing again. Fortunately, our own Minister of State Environment was there, and she held meetings. On climate change, when our president met with the British PM, it was also an issue. It came up. Then the PM pledged that the UK would be willing to partner with Nigeria and the Lake Chad Basin Commission countries to ensure that the recharge of the Lake Chad becomes a reality. So all these things are done, and what is important is that you have the relevant officials of government there who can always follow up. At times when these trips happen, Nigerians, particularly our own industry, the media, they are often quick to say, it is a large team. Yes. What are they all doing there? But there are things to do. Yes, if you do all those discussions on recharging Lake Chad, for instance, and the relevant government officials are not there to follow up, what then do we get out of it?
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mr. Additional. Back again to Honorable Abike. Still on, the role of the Diaspora Commission in trying to woo Nigerians abroad, to target investments in the country. Again, if you like, part of our obsession on Good Morning Nigeria always has to do with the participation of the subnational governments in all of this. What vibrations do you get from Nigerians? I mean, we're talking about how deep the pockets of Nigerians are in the UK, for instance, and the level of the interest that they have. But in most cases, the impression is that everybody has to come to the federal government. If they don't come to you, nothing gets done. What is it that you find that is perhaps the missing link now, and how the subnational entities can be, as it were, dredged up to also be enthusiastic about canvassing diaspora investments?
Yeah, thank you very much. First, I want to tell the governor, I hope he's still there, that he should expect me in Abia. I want my Nibra shoes. I want my Nibra shoes and bags. So I think that's a good one. I just want to say, if that is sustained, you know, it's not going to be perfect, but if that is sustained over a period of time, and we believe in ourselves as Nigerians, I'm sure we'll be proud to wear Nibra shoes and bags, and that is very critical. And
Brazilians are amongst the best shoemakers in the world. Brazilians.
You know, we had, at our last Diaspora Investment Summit, there's a lady, and I think she came from Abia, who exhibited beautiful shoes and bags, and they were probably made in Nigeria, and even used some of our local, you know. Okay. So really, I just want to say that is very commendable. Now, in terms of, sorry, what was your question?
My question, of course, you drifted into bags and shoes. And I hope the governor will respond to that appropriately. Mr. Governor, please get your chief of staff and others to respond.
Yeah, talking about subnational level.
Entities.
Now, what the commission has done, number one, the remittances that Mr. Adebayo talked about is about $25 billion. And I'm glad, you know, the commission has put that on the front burner. And you asked, where's the money? We're working, anyway, that's another topic for another day, but it's huge. Now, in terms of subnational, now, states, we've written to every state to have their focal persons on diaspora, because we need to move from the federal to the subnational and even local government level. And I'm glad that as I speak with you, 17 states already have, 2 states have commissioners for diaspora, some have special advisors. Governor of Abia is actually one of the very first to have an SA diaspora, immediately came into office 4 years ago. And on the 4th of February, we're meeting with all of them here in Abuja, the very first meeting of all focal persons on diaspora in Nigeria. And I hope every state will send somebody, but 17 already have their people on diaspora. For instance, Imo State had the very first Imo Homecoming Summit in Imo State, which we attended. I come and see Imolites from all over the world who came for that summit. And 2 of them, after the summit, we went to visit them. There's a doctor who has set up a regional stroke hospital, the best in Africa, perhaps in the world. Now, people are coming from South Africa, from Morocco, from different parts of the country, of the world, to use that hospital. I don't know the technicality, but he has a machine that nobody has in Nigeria. He's a diasporan who came to set up something to do with epilepsy, stroke, fantastic. So that's medical tourism already. Then we also visited a factory. The guy has set up a factory where he does doors, security doors, PVCs, everything. He decided that as a diaspora, let me come and set up this factory here in my state, rather than be imported from China. So what we do is that we use those as examples. You know, we went to the, traveled, if I got to know Imo much better, went to the communities and profiled these 2 people. So, like you said, we're focusing on subnational level and even local governments, and we're getting cooperation from states. And I'm sure with our very first meeting of focal persons of diaspora, 4th of February here in Abuja, we'll come up with a plan with every state and for every state. And also Ekiti had something in December for citizens in the diaspora. So we hope that other states will do the same thing, and we take it from there. And diaspora, is a major force in this country, and the diaspora will continue to be a very positive force to reckon with, and we'll continue to work with that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, let's talk about the UK continental investment focus, given the diaspora now. Can you give us a breakdown of the verve of the UK, that in the areas of diaspora?
You mean our diaspora in the UK?
Yes.
Oh, everybody's excited. You know, a lot of them want to do things, but no structure. So the commission has provided that structure. Yes, okay. So we're in touch with them. We work very closely with NIPC and the Ministry of Trade and Investment. So, I mean, there was so much excitement in the air. Like I said, we had another event with the diasporans, and it's like, listen, we all want to do one thing or the other. So, like NIPC website, they are going to the website to see areas of opportunities. And usually a lot of them want to go to the various states. So when you come to Abuja, you don't have to, it's not Abuja that you're going to invest in. So we're linking them with this. And that is why it's important to have these focal persons on diaspora in the various states. So there's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of, they are eager to do things in their country. They are eager to participate in their country. Then we want to also have a Nigerian diaspora investment trust fund. Okay. So that, you see, we talk about remittances, $25 billion, and like people say, where is the money? It goes into, sending monies to pay school fees. And then again, the money comes in not as dollars, but you're paid in naira. And we have been asking why. The National Assembly is asking why. So those are, in fact, the National Assembly is looking into that. If you send your money in dollars, why am I getting it in naira? And I'm telling you, like Tilewa said, if we focus on that properly, it can crash the rate, the exchange rate. Yes. So it's a group that we really cannot ignore. So all that is is in the pipeline, and we continue to do our best at the Commission.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, the issue of the remittances by diaspora, I mean, it's one that was articulated in a very persuasive article by the former Minister of Finance, Anthony Ani, sometime late last year. And I think that generated quite some reaction. But it's a matter that was so...
persuasive or controversial?
It's a matter that we'll have to interrogate at some point.
That's why I said the National Assembly has now begun that interrogation. We've written our own report. We've been to the World Bank, who actually, they collate these figures, and there's no debate about $24 billion. Even on CBN website, that's what you'll find. So where the 2.6 billion came, even we don't understand. So you are saying 10% of what we say we get is what you're accounting for. So like I said, it's a bit controversial, but the National Assembly is even actually on it, and they'll be meeting, the Committee on Diaspora will be calling everybody to the table so that we iron these facts once and for all, and then put in place policies. We've been stressing policies, and that's why we hope we have the diaspora policy in place. Policies that will even, we can double that amount of money.
Policies that would work.
Well, let's have the policies first, and then you have a commission to drive it. Okay. So let's have the policy there, then we drive it, working with our diaspora brothers and sisters. So there's so much to do with the diaspora, and even beyond remittances, there are concrete areas of investments that is already happening amongst Nigerians in the diaspora.
All right, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a break now. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation, and then, of course, take your comments that have come in via tweets.
I'm the Managing Director of Petroleum Product Marketing Company, a subsidiary of NNPC. There are significant price discrepancy between Nigeria and its neighbors across Africa. There's a discrepancy of between 150 to 250 naira. That creates an incentive for arbitrage, whereby smuggling triumphed by taking petroleum product across the neighbors so that they can be sold at higher price. While the smugglers are making the money, Nigeria is paying for it. And that payment is distorting everything that we do in terms of planning, in terms of our ability to fund, and thereby taking money that is meant for development. The introduction of this Operation White will have a reduction of close to 6 million liters on a daily basis, which if you take an average of 150, translate to a saving of over 1 billion naira every day. That is the benefit of Operation White, and we have started seeing the great benefit.
Can I see your particulars, sir?
Officer, my particulars no dey here.
In that case, you'll have to come with me to the police station.
Officer, which levels? Where I for find you something make you take arrange your weekend.
What? Offense number 1, driving without particulars. Offense number 2, trying to bribe an officer of the law.
I won't harass Nigerians or take bribe. Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, you're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We're live here in the Abuja headquarters studios. Let's return very quickly to Tilewa Adebajo in our Lagos Network Center. That's the point that Femi Adesina stressed. It was perhaps an obiter, as we say in law, but it's pretty relevant. Now, he says that the UK emphasized at that summit that they would not be interested in funding or financing coal-based projects on account of the fact that, it will be counterproductive to their climate change stance. But here we are. The Chinese, with whom we are doing a lot of business, and China, of course, is all over the African continent. China has been reopening some of its coal plants and pushing ahead with investments in coal. And we also have a number of investments in our coal subsector, because the deposits around Kogi, Enugu were being the most famous, and parts of Nasarawa, which leads me to this point to say, okay, you see the position of the United Kingdom on coal, and then you see what the Chinese themselves are doing. How do we discriminate against potential investment offerings so that we don't compromise our own national interests? At Sochi, for instance, the Russia-Africa Summit, we came away with the offer to say that, okay, they will help us with our refineries and so on and so forth. We went to Saudi Arabia, and it was the same thing. The Saudis said they will help us with our refineries. How do we discriminate against these offerings so that we have the best of all the offerings, rather than getting sucked into one, and then we have all kinds of regrets?
Well, it's very simple. I mean, you need to know what your policies are, and you have to stand for something. If you don't stand for anything, you'll fall for everything. So it's important that we define our policies. We understand what our industrial policies are, what works for us. At this stage where we're not able to provide the right amount of power that we have, then it might be difficult. I mean, we have one of the largest gas deposits in the world. And with gas, you can generate electricity. So that isn't Nigeria's problem. Nigeria's problem is not a resource issue to generate power. We have so much gas that we're not using it. Like I said, one of the biggest investments today is in gas, LNG, Train 7, $10 billion project. That's a gas project. We have another project in Olokola that we're yet to reach a final investment decision on, another gas project in LNG. Most of the power in Nigeria is generated by gas-powered thermal plants, and that is an area where we have competitive advantage. So that is not a problem for us. So if the British government wants to give us money to develop our gas fields, then that's fine, you go there. The coal fields that you see in Kogi is probably things that might be used because of location of industry. There's big cement industry there, and they might use coal to fire their plants if gas pipelines are not already there. So yet again, it also depends on our own industrial policy. And I think what is important, like I said, is that we need to define our monetary policy, we need to define our fiscal policy, we need to define our trade policy, and we need to define our industrial policy. We need to synchronize it and understand how we want to develop our economy. Our economy is growing only at 2.5% per annum. Our population is growing at about over 3% per annum. That is not significant, and that's why we have 100 million Nigerians in poverty. We need to find how we're going to stimulate this economy by synchronizing our policies to be able to get 6 to 7% growth, to lift our people out of poverty. That must be a priority. So we have the natural resources at gas to power Nigeria. So Nigeria's problem is not looking for sources of energy. We have multiple alternatives, and of course we also have hydro. We have hydro plants in Kainji, which is generating close to 600 megawatts that cannot even enter the grid. We have hydro plants in Shiroro. So we have alternatives. Nigeria is a blessed country, and like I've always maintained, it's now a question of let us put the right policies in place, let us set a policy direction that will be able to endear us to grow this country, this economy by 6% per annum and lift 100 million people out of poverty. We have the policies, we have the manpower, we have the resources. We're now looking for the leadership.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Tilewa Adebajo. Thank you so much for your response. I will be coming now to the former Pakistani High Commissioner, and I'm talking about free trade zones. The president on the sidelines of the UK Africa Summit was talking with the Prime Minister, who described Nigeria as not just a world leader, as a continental leader, but an international power of the future. And are we looking at a new Commonwealth free trade area, just like the president is pushing for? Do we see that in the future?
Yes, I think I see that in the future, looking at the vast, huge potentials that Nigeria has, and the fact that the implementation of the free continental trade agreement, it's scheduled to take off, I think, mid-20s, 2020, and that will generate a huge market and provide the necessary platform for various investments, especially by interested investors. But as Mr. Cleo has said, we have alternatives. Nigeria, we have all the resources. We do not really need to concentrate on just one aspect, say coal and gas. This is a country that we have about 184 trillion cubic feet of gas, enough to power the entire African continent. All we are looking for is really the funding to harness the clean energy, to harness green energy, to harness these potentials. And I think going forward, already a deal has already been signed to provide 25,000 megawatts with Siemens, and of course the source will be gas. And in the next 5 to 6 years, we should be having 25,000 megawatts. But please, I just want to make a quick reference to the governor of Abia State and to commend him. Already there are various interventions that have been put in place by the federal government through the central bank. There are about 27 interventions. And at times some of these state governors are shying away that the debts portfolio is going to increase if they issue out the irrevocable standing order to access these funds. But in reality, some of these funds goes to about 15 years repayment moratorium, and at the same time, there's no country that can develop without loans. The private sector, our financial institutions, really do not have the robust funding. Today it's very difficult to go to any bank to provide $100 billion for investment. And I think, talking about policies, as the economists have said, I think we need to really look at our fiscal and monetary policy once again. This single treasury system has really eroded the bank's capacity, because the private sector really depends on the federal government to survive.
All right, Ambassador Donald, thank you very much. As we indicated, we have a number of tweets that have come in. We'll quickly go through those tweets now. Unwogugu Ikechukwu Silvana says, touring the world to appeal for investment in Nigeria is good, but charity should begin at home. The federal and state governments should support and project in-nursing motors, for instance, to other African countries to patronize it for expansion.
And Ibu Godwin tweets, I have my doubts if the United Kingdom still has anything it can offer us.
All right, let's take Mobala Humbabs. The federal government, while pursuing foreign direct investments, must be conscious at improving the country's decayed infrastructure. It's no doubt that efforts are being made to change the narrative, but let's be more aggressive.
And Sani Michael Omokoji tweets, President Muhammadu Buhari is one of the most traveled presidents in history in the name of signing bilateral agreements. Ironically, amidst this, Nigeria is still ranked about the most corrupt country in Africa. That is being disputed, actually, and I hope this would not be just business as usual.
Abdul tweets, now the only way we can say that the visit was fruitful, it wasn't a visit actually, it was a summit, yes. So it was like it was a trip, not a visit, is when all or most of the agreements signed are implemented. Let's start seeing the repatriation of the indicted persons and the stolen funds starched in the UK.
And Echo Sebastian
repatriation,
tweets,
that's extradition. Extradition,
yes. He tweets, this is the time for government to deepen the Nigerian content policy. India created a policy made in India and created an enabling environment for investors who want to manufacture in India. Nigeria should borrow such policy and equally market Nigeria as we are ready for it now.
All right, this is coming from Yusuf Bili Amino. He says the only way to lure investors is through remedying our internal encumbrances, good hospitals, stable electricity, schools, and so on and so forth. And by the way, yes, these very things we're talking about, good hospitals, stable electricity, and schools, there are also investment opportunities. Yes. I'm sure you listened to Honorable Abike talk about the investment in the health sector. So if we don't have good hospitals, that provides you an opportunity for investors to come.
Yes, and Law Alpha C tweets, do accommodate these tweets by reading them. It makes the program exciting and all-encompassing. We have to read all of them, but unfortunately, most people send very long tweets, and it takes a long while to read.
All right, Akeju Olagbaju tweets. It says we need to put up a trade agenda to ensure that the UK opens her market to bridge the trade gap. And we also need more mix of private sector to take part in investment summits.
And Chris Simon tweets, as the summit strengthening the UK's partnership with Nigeria and other African countries to secure a prosperous future for all citizens, the issue of insecurity should also be addressed because no investment thrives on the land that is not secured. Let the visit not be a normal visit. It's a summit, actually, but let summit strengthening a bilateral ties between Nigeria and UK in the areas of investment and infrastructure development.
I was just wondering, just to wrap up, I wanted to just ask His Excellency the Abia State Governor this question before we sign him off. Now, you were part of the President's delegation. There are 36 governors, and all 36 governors couldn't possibly have been with the President. How do your brother governors benefit from your experience and deals that you have struck on behalf of Abia? We know that other governors have been accompanying the President, but in this case, how do you share your experiences?
We have a peer review mechanism. There is the Governors Forum where we meet at least once or twice every month. I hope I'll have the privilege of sharing my experience with my colleagues. And this is not the first time. I was not there in Russia. Governor Yade went, but he brought something which has been useful to me in Abia. So I think I have enough to share with my colleagues, and we have a platform for that.
On that note, we'd like to thank His Excellency Dr. Okezie Ikpeazu, the Executive Governor of Abia State, has been with us via Skype from Umuahia, the capital city. Excellency, thank you very much. But do not forget the request by Honorable Abike Dabiri Erewa with regard to her bag and shoes, Libra shoes. You know, she slightly got off course when she was still thinking about those shoes.
The excitement, you know, of
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Okay. And from Lagos, Mr. Tilewa Adebajo, let's get your closing thoughts on this and other pertinent issues. I know you talked about having the right policy framework to be able to drive all of this, but what else would you like to see?
First of all, I think it's important to understand that the federal government of Nigeria doesn't have any land, so any foreign investor that comes into Nigeria is actually going to go to a state to operate. And I think that's why it's important to get the subnationals involved. As the ambassador knows, he is, as an ambassador, is the #1 investment manager for Nigeria in whichever country he is. And a lot of the ambassador's job is mostly investment promotion. So I think quite clearly we've got it there. And I think the governor is quite impressive on his focus on value addition, and of course Aba is noted for manufacturing and their shoes. So we need to develop these industries, and there are lots of people I even know, my friends in Aba, who are in manufacturing, and they're exporting to West Africa and beyond. So they're already in the African Continental Free Trade Zone already. They're doing that. We just need to encourage that. You know, Abike has a passion for what she's doing. And I think that she's brought this diaspora issue to the front line. And I think it's this sort of passion that gets things done. And you see, so what I would just like to say to Femi is that we need a policy. The government needs to articulate its policy over the next 3 years. in terms of what he wants to do with the economy. The economic management team needs to upgrade the economic recovery growth plan, because that's the last thing we have. We also need to let Femi know that we need to coordinate the economy. It's not just about the central bank governor sitting there and talking about monetary policy. You also have to go into some fiscal restructuring. The debt profile, Femi, is not sustainable, no matter which way you look at it. And a lot of these projects you're talking about in infrastructure are quite bankable. And if you put the concessioning rights, we have an infrastructure regulatory commission. Get them involved. A lot of these projects are bankable. The government does not need to spend money on it. If you put the projects out properly, foreign investors will come in, even with Nigerian banks, collaborate, and Nigerian investors, the local direct investors, and they will get these projects done. Government can't do everything, and that's something we need to realize. So please, Femi, there's issue of coordinating monetary policy, fiscal policy, trade policy, and investment policy. We see what you're doing in the border. We understand what it's trying to do. On the short run, it's okay. But on the long run, you need to be able to control things properly so that we have a balanced economy. It's about articulation. Femi, you're a journalist. It's what you say that I pick up on. And, you know, this gap right now with the policy direction of the government, we need to fill that very quickly and put out another medium-term policy over the next 3 years. When foreign direct investors see these policies, the first people that will start will be the people here in Nigeria. They will start to take advantage of all these things because they're here. Look at your success. You've done LNG Train 7, $10 billion. Build on that success. Get Lokola going also and get other gas projects on the way. The British government has said they'll support all your gas-related projects. Tap into that. So what I'm just trying to say is that, you know, and as the ambassador will verify, you know, these people in foreign lands, they watch what you say and what you do. So please, if everybody can have Abike's passion and we can have the right policies in place, you know, we can get things done. I really don't have a doubt about that. Nigeria having 100 million people in poverty is not just there. You need to look at the metrics. 2.5% growth for this economy is not what we're looking for. We're looking at least 6%. And you have to tell us exactly how we're going to get from 2.5 to 6% and get the confidence going. Communicate. Get your economic management team, get them to communicate with the business community, the investment community, and the global community will catch up.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Tilewa Adebajo, an investment banker and economist from our Lagos Network studio. Thank you so much for your contribution. We also would like to thank the Special Assistant to the President of Media and Publicity, Femi Adesina. Thank you so much for joining us. And our very own MDCO, Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, Abike Dabiri-Erewa, who loves shoes and bags so much. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
But let me be her advocate. She's not only Madam Marcos, by the way.
And we also would love to thank the former High Commissioner to Pakistan, Ambassador Daud Al-Laizi, for coming on the program. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And we have a breaking news that just came in from Abeokuta, which says Shagamu main market Asabo is on fire. Situation almost under control as new fire service deployed to Ogun State. DC Obisa San, Olatunde, and other relevant agencies are on ground to put out the fire. We hope they put it out. Details in our subsequent bulletin. Well, Sports Update is next.